Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 357 of the Stacey West podcast. I'm your host, Ben, and I am joined by a very smart-looking Charlie Beeston this evening. How are you doing, mate? You keeping well?
No, I'm bloody knackered. I've just had to run to the other side of the kitchen to go get a drink because you've told me to hurry up. And honestly, the size of my kitchen, that far...
Big time Beeston.
Studio. I live in a tiny little studio and I can basically lean over to the sink here, you know. I wish. I wish.
Dear. How are we doing, mate?
But anyway, I am very well, thanks, mate. How are you?
I'm all right. It has been a busy old time recently. Yeah, just lots of things happening all over the place. We've got some plans that hopefully we'll be able to share relatively soon. But exciting things happening. But yeah, overall, I think it's been a quiet week at the football club. So we will try and drag out this little bit of banter for a little while. I believe you had some visitors, didn't you, over the weekend?
Yeah, for the record, I love how smooth you make the chat at the start. Oh, we're really going to drag out having to have a conversation. I mean, I do actually quite like you, Ben. I can just like sit and have a conversation with you without having to drag it out. But if you don't feel the same about me, whatever.
I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody. It's just that I'm aware that people will occasionally just talk about football in the YouTube comments. So
that's a very good point. That's a very good point. But speaking about football, there was some football at the weekend. Yeah, you were right. There was a couple of lads who came over to Gibraltar to come watch a game over on, they came Saturday to Monday, I think, for a game on Sunday, one of the Lincoln Red Imps games. Fans of the podcast as well, Ed and his dad Martin, and they popped me a little message to get some kind of recommendations for sports and things like that, and I ended up going out and meeting them for a pint on Sunday afternoon. Got chatting, about Lincoln and all of that, and then ended up having a few more pints, going to the game myself, which I didn't intend to, and quite a few more drinks as well. So it was a bit of a heavy one on Sunday, but do you know what? It was really, really enjoyable. It's always great to catch up with Lincoln fans over here, because at the end of the day, the only real kind of Lincoln conversations you really get to have, other than just talking to people at work about it and then just kind of nodding and smiling because they've got no idea or don't really care, is obviously, when we do the podcast and such. So it's always really good to kind of have those conversations in person. And obviously, if anybody ever comes over to Gibraltar and wants shown around any of the bars, then, let me know. I mean, sorry, show around some of the tourist attractions. Yes, all sports bars.
You say that. I mean, I'm fairly certain that they won't need accommodation. What with your massive mansion, with your amazing kitchen.
Yes, my literal tiny studio that I'm very hopeful that I can move out of. So, do you know what? After my first year at uni, I swore I would never live in a studio again, because I did it in my first year at uni, and honestly, I hated it. Nothing worse than waking up and just seeing the pile of dishes that you couldn't be asked washing up the night before, just still sat there.
And what the solution to that is, Charlie? The solution to that is to do them before you go to bed. And that is coming from somebody that's had to grow up very, very quickly over the past 10 years or so.
No, that's not the solution at all. The solution is to get a wall between your bed and the kitchen.
So, yeah, I mean, you went out and you watched was it the Red Imps game that you went to watch?
It was a Red Imps versus St. Joseph's game, top of the table clash, 0-0 draw, awful game of football. But, it's the way it always is, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's like I say, that there's not been a great deal of news coming out of the club. So if you are watching on the YouTube at the moment, feel free to drop us a question. We do have a couple of questions in the Stacey West Discord. So, we'll be able to answer a couple of them, and maybe, they don't necessarily have to be about football, but if they are, then it's all fun. We've got one that is definitely not about football coming up. But let's talk about the Imps. So there is I suppose, probably the one big bit of news that's come out, and it's one that Michael Skubala himself has said shocked him. I am partly shocked. I am in no way surprised. Joe Gardner's red card has not been rescinded, and he will now be eligible for a 3-match ban starting on Saturday. So, Charlie, as a partially sighted man, could you see anything in that foul or that challenge on Saturday that could have resulted in a red card? I know we spoke about it on the podcast on Monday, but let's get your shout on it as well.
Do you know what? I was watching it on the TV. I saw the challenge come in, as you do. The ref blows up. Okay, take it. We've got a free kick. Genuinely, that was what my thought was. Like, and then, okay, it went against us. So what? 2 players go in, and there's a clash. It happens. It's never nice to see happen. And then a red card got brandished. Obviously, I was as gobsmacked as everyone else. And it was a little bit annoying, actually, for me, because I was on a slight delay. The Wi-Fi wasn't great on Saturday, and there was about a minute delay. And a mate of mine's not a Forest fan, and he messaged me saying, oh, that better not have been deserved kind of thing. I says, what on earth are you on about? He basically spoiled the red card for me. So then I see it's a red card, and obviously the replays, and it's just absolutely ludicrous. In no way is it a red card. A foul at best.
We spoke about
this. A yellow card at absolute best.
Yeah, I mean, like we spoke about it, and the more I see it, the less I'm convinced there's even contact.
I agree.
Skubala spoke about it in his press conference today, and he said the decision was that it was late and high. I don't think that was high in any sense of the word, because you watch it and the grass gets torn up by his foot as it lands. So not entirely sure how you can say it's a high foot. But yeah, look, the fact is Joe Gardner's going to be unavailable now for 3 games, which is a massive shame. And I really feel for him because he was absolutely distraught when he came off the pitch. The lads have all rallied around him by the sounds of it. And rightly so, because I just think he's been really, really hard done by. The fact that the referee has now brandished 8 red cards in 18 games. That's almost 1 every 2. I think there's probably a reasonable feeling and a reasonable request that first-time officials, it feels like they're getting fast-tracked through the National League and basically bypassing everything. And I don't really like the phrase not paying their dues, but honestly, I don't know what else you can say because it's his 3rd. I think was it his 3rd game overall in the EFL and his first game in League One.
I don't want to go off at the ref necessarily because he made a mistake from the way that we see it, and that happens to the most seasoned referees. However, I'm more than happy to go off at the FA panel that have had the absolute hindsight of, I'm sure, a large number of different camera angles and testimony from across the board, and yet they've still upheld the decision. I don't get that one. That's the one I don't get. In the moment, you're really angry that we've given away a red card when it shouldn't have been, obviously. But it's the panel and sitting back and watching that, and it really wants it. It's like when, in the Premier League, right? You've got VAR. If VAR have all of the different angles and yet they still get it wrong, it angers you more than what it did before VAR was about, because back then you could at least stomach the fact that it was just a one-off mistake, or okay, maybe not a one-off, but it was just a mistake that, quite frankly, any of us who were on that pitch from that angle could have made. But to have all of the angles and yet still make what seems like a really crazy decision, unless they've got the benefit of some angle that we don't have or something like that, or he just admitted to trying to recklessly hurt someone, which obviously wouldn't have happened.
I think the angle they've probably got... the angle they've probably got is the GoPro that was strapped to Gary Monk's face when he saw the challenge and immediately ran off the bench waving his arms. Because let's face it, it was the reaction that got him sent off. But yeah, look, that is primarily the main bit of news that is come out of the club since Monday's podcast. The other ones, if you are getting a club coach to any of the away games for the next 4 away games, I believe it is, They will be departing from the common rather than the ground due to roadworks around Sinsel Bank. So that's the news section done. Unless anything has come out in the past 10 minutes or so, I think that's probably about that.
It hasn't.
Let's have a look at the press conference from today, because that literally dropped about 20 minutes before we went live. So I had a quick watch of that, and there were some interesting bits coming out of it ahead of the Orient game. The first one is that Bailey Cadamartri has gone back for another scan today, so they're not 100% sure when he's going to be back. It is taking longer than expected, so not the best of news there, but hopefully we can continue to rotate the players that we have in and get a decent set of results coming out of that. Other injury news. Sadly, we spoke about this last week. Sadly, it looks like Ethan Roughan is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks, which puts him 8 weeks from middle of Feb. You're talking middle of April, so he will be back for whatever potential run-in we may have, whether that's going to be back in training or back on the pitch. We don't know. Obviously, not the most ideal of circumstances. Tom Hamer, however, is back on the grass, so he is training with the squad and he's back there. And the other thing that is a potential doubt for Saturday is Tom Bayliss, who came off at the weekend with a tight hamstring. So not the most serious of things, but hopefully, it loosens up a little bit ahead of the weekend. So, any thoughts on the injury news and returns, Charlie?
It's just annoying, isn't it? It's just really annoying when you sit to watch a press conference and it's just quite a bit of doom and gloom on the injury front.
Good about Hamer, though.
Yeah, no, of course. I'm going to say, I'm not saying that part's the doom and gloom. I didn't feel like that needed to be said, but apparently now it does, right? Thanks, Ben, You
know how some people are if you don't spell it out for them.
No, absolutely. No, look, obviously, we're going to miss Ethan Roughan a lot. I know it's already been spoken about. I don't care. I'm going to speak about it again because he's one of the most pivotal parts of our team and the way that we set up. So, of course, he's going to be a big miss. Granted, I do feel like we've got decent squad depth in those areas. Maybe we'll see Sam Clucas play and take the tinfoil hats off for a little bit. But it is still a big shame. Honestly, outside of that, little kind of niggles you'll expect. Obviously, really hope that Cadamartri is also going to be okay, and we'll see him again this season. It would be a big shame, if it's too long and we don't. As soon as you start hitting February, March, you're going to be talking about potential season-ending injuries, aren't you? Because 6 or 8 weeks by then is a season ender. Really hope that he can come back. However, on the flip side, potentially kind of good opportunities again for some of the other strikers that we've got in the squad. Freddie, I really like Freddie Draper. I've said it on here before. I feel like he could do something with a good run of games, so potentially we'll see that. Obviously with Jovan as well, the opportunities that he can get, hopefully he can kind of turn those into something as well. A good end to the season for a striker could be really, really pivotal for the start of next season. Not that I want to write off this season yet, but you kind of got to think long term as well, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think the question was asked of us on Monday: do we think that the season is effectively over? And do we just kind of ride it out? I think that the majority decision between me and Gaz, I think it was actually the same for both of us. You can't have a majority decision when there's two of you, Ben. God's sake. We essentially
you said it.
We essentially both said, like, yes, it's probably over at this point. So let's just go out with a bit of a bang and see what we can do. There is obviously always an outside chance, but I think there are going to be teams that are just too strong. One of which we will talk about potentially. Well, I say potentially, we will talk about them, but potentially maybe too strong. But we'll talk about them in a little while. Right, let's have a conversation about some questions. So we did get one sensible question and one Stacey West style question in the Discord. I'm just trying to see if we've actually missed any from last week as well.
For the record, they are both sensible. But...
So let's ask Dave's question first. So Dave says, with the current squad and taking account of injuries, would we change the formation? Lots of crosses now, but very few goals from open play, excluding the Peterborough game. Maybe not suiting the likes of Rico, etc. Now, I'll ask you first, Charlie, because I have thoughts about Rico in particular in this one.
Would I change the formation? Would I change the shape that we typically play and the roles that we deploy? Yes. Do I know what I would want to change it to? No. That's Skubala's decision. That's not mine. Would I change it though? Yes, because you've literally just said it there, and you had the conversation with Gaz the other day, and we kind of just alluded to it there as well regarding, is this season sort of over? Do we just kind of ride the highs and hit the lows for the rest of the season, the next few months? Probably. So why not experiment? Why not have a bit of fun? Why not try something a little bit different? And why doesn't Skubala kind of get the tactics board out and just do a couple of different things and see what works, what doesn't? Quite frankly, at this point, if we lose a game 3-0, but we've tried something new, is what it is. And if we go ahead and win the game 3-0 because we've tried something new, well, we'll be sat on the podcast hailing him as the next coming of Pep Guardiola, won't we? Do you know what I mean? But that's the thing. For me, I just think if you're going to do something like that, you do it now. You don't do it at the start of a new season. Obviously, yes, you'll have pre-season and such, but I like the idea of just trying a few new different things out at the moment, trying to see if we can get the best out of certain players. Also, to be kind of cynical, if you like, but why not try something a little bit different to be able to get the best out of certain players going into the transfer window when maybe they could get us a little bit more money if they have a really strong end to the campaign? It sounds really daft, doesn't it? Because obviously you're going to want your best players and such, but why not try and shine certain players in the best light? Why not mix things up a little bit? Like I say, if you're going to do it, you do it now.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think you say about getting the best out of certain, players maybe that would be in the window. I think it's a good opportunity to just get players playing with a bit of freedom, a bit of fun. We mentioned Rico Hackett there. I think he's in a post-match interview previously. He said, I'm not necessarily a wing back. I prefer to play on the wing or a little bit further forward. I would quite like to see 3 up top, maybe with maybe Jovan out on the right, Collins in the middle, Hackett on the left, something like that. Or even, as Andy has suggested, would you like to see more of Eric Ring? Yes.
Yes.
It's one of those where I think it would be it would be a good shout to see Ring coming back in. I just think there's a lot of potential in the squad that at the moment, maybe the way that we're playing isn't necessarily the best system to get the best out of the players that we have. It's a tricky one because you don't want to mess up a formula too much in case it really, really backfires. But like you say, if we're not necessarily looking at going up this season and we're safe, it's the song, isn't it? We're not going down, we're not going up. We're Lincoln City. We don't care all that much. I'm trying to be...
I don't think that's the words, Ben.
I'm trying to be advertiser friendly, all right? So yeah, it's...
Yeah, but okay, with that, right, and I like the idea of, maybe playing with a little bit more width up top to have something like that. But just imagine if you're Dylan Duffy and then suddenly we go and play with out-and-out left winger. Yeah, you know what I mean?
But we've got a buyback on Dylan. So if we do play like that and it works and we decide, hang on, we could do with another one, just bring him back. It's easy. That's how it works, isn't it? It's that simple.
I didn't think we did.
We do. Okay. We have a buyback clause on Dylan Duffy. You were on the podcast when Jez confirmed it.
No, Jez said that they discussed things like buybacks and then in the end they just decided to let him go.
No, he said we have a buyback.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, there we go. I think there is a. I personally think there's more of a discussion to be had around switching it up and just doing what you do on Football Manager when things are getting to that point in the season and you don't really care anymore, and you're probably gonna not do particularly well. Oh, by the way, I did mean to ask you at the top of the show. Are you okay, Charlie? Because I saw that Football Manager 25 has been cancelled.
Don't. So it has, and I was, of course, very upset. So what I did was I immediately went and started a new save on Football Manager 24 with updated squads in League One. So I started a new Lincoln save with this season's squads, including the January transfers as well. Right, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. Immediately started it. First of all, an abundance of errors. They had MJ Kamara and Asheen Gallagher both on loan at Peterborough United instead of Peterborough Sports. And I couldn't recall them, which was very annoying. But it didn't matter because I actually won the playoff final in the first season. So I'm just that good.
There you go, Clive. If you're listening, get big time beasting in for next season, and we'll be all right.
I'm all right. I prefer to watch Skubala. I don't want to get shouted at. I don't want to get booed at.
Right. So let's have a look. Some other questions that we have. I don't know if you're looking at the comments, Charlie, but I'm going to ask you this question. What's the capital of Nicaragua?
I know it. It's what's it called?
He's reading the comments.
Managua.
Yeah, it's because he's reading the comments. There we go. Fair enough.
No, actually, I had it open up on a Google tab the minute that I saw the question got asked in the YouTube
I am terrible
comment.
at geography. If there is ever anybody that is putting me in a quiz, if you want me to lose the quiz badly, ask me a geography question because I'm terrible at it. Right. Let's have a look. One more question that we have in the chat. There's two more actually. They're both from Andy. Would you like to see more of Eric Ring? Yes, long and short of it. Where he plays, I don't necessarily know at this point in time, but I would like to see more of him. Maybe filling in for Tendai if Tendai's getting a little bit tired in his age at the end of the season, maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see. Charlie?
God, just call him an old bastard and be done with it.
He's younger than me, substantially younger than me, so that's fine.
That says it all. Look, I would like to see more of Eric Ring. Do I think that we've seen enough of him to kind of prove that he should be in the starting 11 week in, week out? No. Through no fault of his own, through no fault of, Skubala picking the players or anything like that. It's kind of just the way that it is. But I think he was one of those really exciting players in terms of what we were bringing in the summer, especially, from the Scandinavian market and trying that out properly for the first time. So I would definitely like to see a little bit more out of him, just to really see whether he can live up to the potential that I think a lot of people, myself included, by the way, were hyping him up with in the summer.
Yeah, I think it's one of those signings that is going to get the attention of people, and then when he doesn't make the play, when he doesn't make the first team as much in his first season, the club are going to get the criticism for it, and I understand that. But I feel that it was one of those signings where it is, in inverted commas, the project signing. And given the news that we've had over the past couple of weeks with regard to the finances in the division and the way that we're trying to do things, it feels like that is the kind of target for some of these signings. I mean, you look at the likes of JJ McKeon and Rob Street, they've come in. They haven't got the game time here. They've gone out on loan. They're seemingly doing quite well from what I understand and what I saw of it. Rob Street played pretty well against Palace on Monday night. So, they're players that are going to do well elsewhere. And if they can get that experience, get that, game time up and come back to us a better player, then it will be at the point where they can then maybe slot into the first team a little bit more. Because I think the illusion that I think some people may be under is if we go out and we buy a young player, the expectation is that they're going to slot straight into the Lincoln City first 11 at a level where it's probably above where we actually are at this point. They're not going to be able to slot straight into a first team that are going to play in the top 6, top 7 of League 2 or of League 1. It might be that they go to League 2 and get a bit of game time there. So, yeah, it's fairly obvious that he's a project player, but I think he's a project player that we want to see develop at our club rather than somebody else's. So it'd be interesting to see where he goes and how he does. So yeah. Kate says, hello both from the Bowling for Soup gig in Nottingham. I am slightly honoured that you are choosing to watch and listen to us as opposed to the fine purveyors of pop punk that are Bowling for Soup. Do you know who Bowling for Soup are, Charlie, or are they too old for you?
I have got absolutely no idea. And for the record, you just said, you take pride in the fact that Kate is choosing to watch and listen to us. Probably a very good chance that we aren't even being heard over the sound of the music. So, maybe that's why. Maybe Kate just wanted to look at our faces, which again, we'll take pride in that.
And just to really rub it in, Bowling for Soup did a song called 1985. That song was released in 2004. There is now more time that has passed between the release of 1985 and 1985 itself. There is now more time between the release of 1985 and now. So if you know who Bowling for Soup are and you want to feel very old, that has probably just done it for you.
That only came out a year after I was born.
It came out on... You were...
I was born in 2003. It came
out
a year after I was born.
You are a fetus.
As you tell me.
Yes, indeed. Right, there is one more question which has come from the Stacey West Discord, and I do apologise for those expecting the cutting edge of footballing discussion here, but it's what you get when you sign up and you can ask us stupid questions. John Davison asks, what's your favourite chocolate bar?
You know what? I've had time to think about this and I still don't bloody know. For the record, I am a child. I am much more of a sweets guy than a chocolate guy. Okay, but in terms of favorite chocolate, just a nice simple. Can I have Maltesers?
You can have
even
a Malteser
though it's not chocolate bar. Can I?
They do the bars, don't they? The teasers.
I know, but I'm on about actual Maltesers.
No, you can't have them. You can't have them. You've got to have a bar.
Fine. We'll just go for a nice Galaxy. Nice bar of Galaxy milk chocolate.
I mean, there is a correct answer to this, and it is a Kinder Bueno. So there you go. That's my...
I don't think I've ever had a Kinder Bueno.
Oh, you need to sort your life out, Charlie. The other option, because I did ask, can we have discontinued ones? Because there was one bar that was... Oh, it was absolutely brilliant. It was the Marble Bar. The Marble Bar got discontinued, and they haven't brought it back. They've done loads of campaigns to say, bring these chocolate bars back, but they've never done the Marble Bar, and it upsets me. Genuinely upsets me, because that is a fine chocolate bar. White and milk chocolate mixed together with praline in the middle. Oh, beautiful. Anyway, right. I think that's probably enough that we can rinse out of those questions. I don't think there's anything else necessarily that we need to talk about. So after this short commercial break, if you're watching on YouTube, we will say hello to people. Andy Brown says, Karamak, good shout. Yeah, we will we'll come back and we will discuss the weekend's game against Leyton Orient, who are in a fine run of form, and see if we can stop them. See you in a minute. There we go. Right, let's see who's in. We got Andy is in, as we've seen a couple of times. Roy is in. How we doing? Flossie is in. Good to see you, as always. John Davison's in. Malcolm is in. He obviously asked what's the capital of Nicaragua. Andy said that it was indeed Managua. Malcolm says 100% for geography. And Andy very honestly said it was from Google. To which Malcolm said, cheat. The question that we didn't ask from Andy, actually, do we think the shit that Jez gets is justified? Sorry. I think we know full well that, yeah, it's not. We're fans of Jez. We like what he does. We think that he is a force for, well, he is a good appointment by the football club. I was going to say a force for good. That sounds really, really pretentious. But no, I think, yeah, he does a lot of good for the football club. And I think he gets unfairly maligned because people don't understand what his job is. So, yeah, I think there's a lot made of things that simply aren't there. And we will obviously have to, understand that some people don't get that. Right, John says that Maltesers are a good choice. Apart from you can't just eat one, so you've got to eat the whole packet. Yeah, that's fair enough. Malcolm says he's heard of bowling for a pig, but not for soup. Bowling for a Soup are a punk rock band. They're very good. I would recommend. I think you might actually enjoy them, Charlie. Although the fact that I don't know what that noise was. I don't know if that got picked up on the microphone, but there was just a really strange noise outside my front window. Unbelievable. Anyway, right. That's probably going to do this for the break. Should we come back in and talk about Orient?
Sure.
Because I think it's going to be a tricky game. So, right, we'll come back in 3, 2, 1. And there we go. That is our sponsor for the Thursday episode of the podcast. Obviously, normally we will try and do these on a Wednesday, but given that we did one on Monday, we didn't want to give you too much of a good thing too soon. So, right, Charlie, Saturday.
Hello.
We're off down to London.
Are you? Nice.
Well, the club are.
They are.
And we're facing Leyton Orient. Now, Leyton Orient are in a very, very rich vein of form at the moment. Obviously, I think a lot of people would have seen probably more than most of Orient on Saturday last weekend, where they took Man City quite a distance before Kevin De Bruyne came on. Yeah. It's like, yeah, cool. If you need Kevin De Bruyne to beat Leyton Orient, then they're probably doing something right. I think they've only lost once in the league since December. They're in a really good run of form. In that run, they've only lost one. They've drawn two. Couple of, decent cup results. And then, like I said, falling to Manchester City's, as Malcolm points out, Manchester City's reserves. But, yeah, is there any way that we can beat them on Saturday, Charlie? Because Marcus Gabala had some words which we'll come to after you've, given your opinion.
It's going to be a really, really tough game, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
A really tough game. Look, I like yourself, Ben, and like I'm sure many other people did watch the game on Saturday for Leyton Orient. I'm not actually going to buy into the fact that it was the reserve Man City team because they had a good few first-team players out as well. And they honestly, they gave an incredible game to the English champions, bear in mind. But that's just the magic of the FA Cup, isn't it? I think, first of all, Zach Geacock's going to be constantly thinking about not getting chipped for most of the game on Saturday, and potentially is going to have that in the back of his mind and not kind of step out too high. But no, absolutely great performance by them. Now, in terms of us against them in the league, obviously it's a totally different kettle of fish, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
They are a very, very strong side. Currently sat in 7th place. They are in what many may deem an unlikely fight for a playoff spot. They're certainly probably more of a fight for a playoff spot than what we are. And, they're 7 points ahead of us, bearing in mind. And like you say, they are a well-oiled machine. Richie Wellens, I think, is a fantastic coach for what he's doing there. And he's got them set up playing some really strong football on a very consistent basis. And of course, we'll kind of delve into the specifics on that in a little bit. But the overall feeling is it's going to be a very tough game away from home. They're not unbeatable. We're not going away from home and playing against Birmingham, where you think, even as Lincoln fans, you're probably more likely to bet against the club, obviously. But certainly not going to be bloody easy, is it? No. And it's a little bit frustrating, really, when you think about it, that Leyton Orient are as good of a side as what they are this season. But honestly, I'm actually not that surprised. I predicted them reasonably high up at the start of the season. They've got some really strong players. They've got, like I said, a really strong manager for what they need to do there. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. But what are your thoughts, Ben?
Well, I mean, it's I think we're fairly... You said it, it's going to be a fairly obviously tough game at the weekend. I think listening to the press conference earlier today, Marcus Gabala basically says that they're on a great run. He went to see them play Mansfield in the week, and they absolutely dismantled them. They're a fast team. They like to break well, and they're in form. I say 8 wins out of 10, and it's just ridiculous. Lost once since December. when in the same kind of period, we've not necessarily been setting the world on fire. I think the plan is to go at them, be aggressive. But when you look at the Leyton Orient stats, you can tell that they're a fast attacking team. I think a lot of people would have been very surprised by the Manchester City game watching that. Obviously, the goal that they scored, I still think it's really harsh that they've taken it away from Don Roughan. It was an unbelievable strike, but I need to find something that I can touch. It doesn't seem like Lightning's going to be able to strike twice on that one. It was just an unbelievable strike the weekend. So, there's a part of me that thinks, maybe hopes, that they might be a bit tired from 2 intense games in the space of a week. But we know that's not necessarily how football works. It's going to be a very, very difficult afternoon. I was looking into this a little bit, and maybe Chris would be proud of me here, but they do seem to be among the highest in the division for the stats in terms of pressing. I think they're the PPDA. There you go. That's the ding, ding, ding. Not from the person you would have expected it for. I believe is among the highest in the division. They tend to play in that sort of 4-2-3-1, 4-5-1 with the 3 attacking midfielders there. There's plenty of danger men. Kelman's got 8 goals, Donnelly with 5. Ethan Galbraith's got 5 from the back as well, so he's coming up from defence and scoring. There's loads of goals in the team, maybe slightly overperforming, but average of 52% possession, 72% pass accuracy, the joint second fewest goals conceded. It really, really doesn't make it easy reading, and I wonder if it's going to take something incredibly special to beat them. So what do you know about Orient specifically, Charlie? Is there anything that we've missed so far?
Yeah, so obviously touching on kind of what you ended with there is their defensive record, which is very, very strong. They've actually got the most clean sheets in the league this season. Like you say, they are joint second in terms of fewest goals conceded. And again, it shows the way that they set up. They really don't give too many opportunities away. And even when they do, they are able to stop the ball from actually going into the back of the net, which is always a nice trait to have, isn't it? Probably a little bit similar to kind of where we were in that same sort of position this time last year as well, quite interestingly. In terms of going forward as well, they create chances, sure, but what kind of makes them stand out is just how clinical they are with them. They are overperforming their XG quite considerably. In fact, I believe it's over 8 goals more than what their XG suggests they should have scored over the course of the season. Now,
43 compared to 36, or just under 36.
And I think, again, that's the thing. You can expect a slight swing in that always, but then there will always be 1 or 2 teams over the course of the season that are real outliers in certain areas. Leyton Orient are very much that in terms of going forward, and just shows how clinical they are with the chances that they do get, which means that defensively we are going to have to be on song on Saturday. Now, as I said, they're defensively they are unbelievably strong, which does mean that we're going to have to make sure that we're creating opportunities. Probably quite a few of them. We're going to have to create sort of high density chances quite often, and we're going to have to show a little bit of clinicalness that maybe we haven't really shown over the course of the season so far. But you'd like to think with our kind of strike options at the moment, we're maybe moving towards being able to have getting the goals that our chances deserve, especially with the likes of James Collins obviously coming in now as well, and kind of his goal scoring record already for the club and overall in his career. So I am very much hoping that is something that we can build on. It's going to be a low scoring game though, I think, honestly. I think the only way it's going to be high scoring is if they are as clinical as what they have shown. We give up too many chances, which again, I don't really see happening, but there's always a risk of that. You are correct as well. Their pressing stats, they are very, very high for those compared to all the other teams in the division. They are actually top of the league in terms of the possessions won in the final third. So, that shows they're going to be on us. They're going to be on our defenders constantly. It may mean that we might have to go long on a couple of occasions to kind of beat that press rather than just constantly trying to play out from the third if they are really well structured in it. Now, does that point to a certain kind of player partnership maybe a little bit further up the pitch? I wouldn't be too surprised again, honestly, to see Freddie Draper and James Collins going up top together. I think it worked quite well against Cambridge, and I think it can work quite well in this game as well. So I would be happy with that. Let's just not go and attack Sean Roughan because he does a few long balls early on. The last thing we want is to get caught out from the high press at the start of the game because it'll knock the confidence of that defence very, very quickly. So there is a chance that kind of the way we start in the first 10, 15 minutes might be different to the way we end the game. So I think it's just about making sure that we're adaptable. I also agree with what you said at the start there, by the way. One of the biggest, I think, opportunities that we've got going into this game is the fact that hopefully they will be very drained from a week of high-intensity football. And we, as Gary mentioned on the podcast the other week, which was obviously a very good point that I think we all agree with, we are a side who typically perform better when we've had a week on the training pitch to properly prepare for a game. So there is a chance that we're maybe just a little bit fresher to be able to kind of get those opportunities, which could mean that high press is still high, but hopefully less high intensity. Of course, like you said, doesn't always work like that. No. Maybe not, especially for the first 10 minutes. But we can dream, can't we?
Absolutely, we can. So that we will. I will come back to something that you just said there before we finish. But one thing I wanted to possibly talk about is how do you see us lining up on Saturday, given some of the potential injury news, potential, it's a 3-game week that's coming up. So we're looking at a lot of football in the space of 7 or 8 days. If we take the lineup against Cambridge and see where we could potentially make changes, personally, I feel that this is the first game where Sam Clucas is going to come in. I have a feeling that he may well start the game. I would like to see it happen, primarily because we are without Ethan Roughan now for, as we've said, between 6 to 8 weeks. And also, Conor McGrandles is he's coming under some stick, not necessarily for, I wouldn't necessarily say it's unwarranted. I think he's looked maybe a little bit jaded, a little bit tired over the past couple of games. I think it probably might be the spot where we give him a rest for Saturday and bring in Sam to just shore up that midfield a little bit. As Gary said, I think he's under the impression that, under the assumption from wherever that, Clucas may have been brought in to potentially be cover for Ethan, and then obviously the situation has blown up around that, which we've spoken about and we will not discuss again. But I honestly think that, Clucas coming in, Malcolm suggests here, I wonder if Jeffries will be back on the left. It's a good shout. I don't think Rico had his best game on Saturday against Cambridge either. So yeah, how do you see us lining up, and do you think there'll be any major changes, Charlie?
Major changes, probably not for this game, if I'm honest. In terms of things like a change in shape or anything like that right now. I agree with you that I think that Sam Clucas is going to play a part. I probably disagree that he's going to start, if I'm honest. I think if he was going to start, it would probably be more likely to be sort of the second or third game of the game week rather than the game against Orient, if I'm honest. But I certainly wouldn't be at all surprised to see him play a part. In terms of the other players, look, I agree regarding the conversation around Dom Jeffries. There could very much be a chance that he kind of does come back in on to the left-hand side. I really like Dom Jeffries. I think he's shown a lot of quality so far this season, kind of being plonked into a new team, sometimes into a bit of a new, novel position for him as well. So, yeah, again, I've been really kind of impressed with him. So I would be more than happy to see him get a start. Like I say, I think that we could see Collins and Draper up top together in this one, if I'm honest. Outside of that, again, like I say, no kind of major changes. Probably the back three of Rowan, O'Connor and Jacko. obviously Joe Gardner's not going to be playing, unfortunately. But yeah, and then potentially we could see Ben House come in and play that kind of more of a number 10 sort of role, and we kind of just shift the shape ever so slightly and have him kind of just sitting behind Collins and Draper, and then potentially McGrandles and Hamilton a little bit further back on that one could be the way that one goes.
You see,
especially if
thought,
Bayliss can't play a full 90 or anything.
That was what I was going to say. I mean, if Skubala's hinting there that Bayliss has came off with a bit of a tight hamstring, if that's potentially still causing him problems, the semi-obvious answer at this point, given the injury situation with a few people up there, the obvious answer there is Ben House comes in and plays that 10 role, which I think he's done quite well in when he's come in. He's obviously not set the world on fire, but I don't think he's embarrassed himself by any stretch. So I think that's a decent shout there to see. What could happen. Yeah, I think ultimately similar lineup. Jeffrey's on the left. I think Lucas in the middle to start, and then House to replace Bayliss in that number 10 role. So it will certainly be an interesting one. But you mentioned there about let's not get on Sean Rowan's back. Unfortunately, that's exactly what's happened. We will talk about it because personally I find this a bit ridiculous. So the club have obviously put out the pre-match press conference, and Sean Rowan is involved in the press conference this week. He was asked, with your contract situation coming up, is that something that you think about, or do you just prefer to focus on the football? He said it's not crossed his mind, and he just wants to focus on playing football, get to the end of the season and playing as much football as he possibly can. The clip went out. He is sat there doing the interview with his arms crossed. And that has apparently meant that he is definitely leaving, and that we should get rid of him. And he clearly doesn't want to play for us anymore and all the rest of it. Now, I get it. I know that at the moment there is a certain malaise around certain areas, and I don't know how to fix that. It's not my job to fix that. I will just come on and I will talk about football and I will talk about the club that I love. But I think some of this is overblown. We've been lucky enough to meet Sean Rowan a couple of times. We've spoken to him. That's his demeanor. That is how he is. He doesn't, he's not a TV presenter. He doesn't come on and he doesn't, he's not going to be the effervescent, well, hey, look at me. He will sit there and he's shy. He probably doesn't feel overly comfortable being in that position, being interviewed. And I think the question that was asked of him, fair enough, does it affect you? Does it affect your game? Does it affect how you're playing? If he comes back and says, yeah, absolutely does. I'm not staying. It really bothers me. It really impacts how I play when I'm thinking about my contract. That's not the kind of answer that people are going to want to hear, because they'll get on his back again. I just think in a situation like this, I don't think that the people that are in that spot can necessarily win. And it's so difficult for that. Let's not forget, as we've already discussed, Sean Rowan is 21 years old. Like, he is not going to be media trained up the backside. He's not going to be a sparkling personality when you put a camera on him. He's going to be a 21-year-old footballer. Like, give the lad a break. I'm sure at the end of the season, if he does decide to go, we will be due a hefty compensation fee. I don't know what the numbers would be, but given that it's based on how much time and that there's a split, I think isn't there between? Well, I know we spoke about this the other day, but there's a split between the number of games and the amount of time that's been invested in their development. Sean Rowan is 21 years old. He's played 100 games for Lincoln City. That is, that's going to be a big fee. Like, regardless of what you think about how things work out when players leave the club, we'll be in line for a decent chunk of change when that happens. So, regardless of what happens with Sean Rowan at the end of the season, just let the guy play football. It's ridiculous. But there we go. Thoughts?
Do you know what? I get it to an extent because, if things aren't going well and suddenly, you're watching your team's press conference and one of the players who's playing week in, week out is kind of laid back, arms crossed, answering the questions, but that kind of demeanor, you're like, I'd like a little bit more enthusiasm, obviously. But then you go back and watch all of his other interviews, and even when we're smashing it and he's smashing it, and actually that's the exact same way he does the interviews, you're like, oh, okay, actually, no, it's fair enough. But it's also, making sure to listen into what he's actually saying, not just looking at what's on the screen, isn't it? Otherwise, press conferences like that were typically always just on the radio. The fact they're being videoed now is just a bonus. We don't want to start hammering into that as saying, oh, well, these players now must make sure they're looking, perfect. Bearing in mind, he'd have probably been training literally just before, had a shower, whatever, come out and then having to do that sort of thing. To be honest, he might not even want to be there. He might not want to do the interview, which, of course, would be totally fair enough as well. But I definitely don't think that this is any kind of like an attitude problem or anything like that. And I just think that people just read too much into it. And again, like I say, I get it because you want all of your players to constantly be enthused. You want to see, as soon as they step onto the pitch, for example, that they're all rallying around each other, getting themselves ready to go and properly there. And when they're on the pitch, they can do that. When they're off the pitch, quite frankly, I don't care as long as they do it when they're on the pitch. Do you know what I mean? And they still conduct themselves in a professional manner. And like you say, he's a young lad. It is what it is. I think the only thing that it kind of brings into question a little bit, and I am sure that there are going to be contractual agreements that the club have. I am sure that there's going to be agreements that the club have with certain players and things like that about minimum mandated interview slots and things like this. But maybe it's just about looking as to which players are the best players to be bringing out in certain positions and in certain weeks on the interview slots. But again, they shouldn't have to think about that, though. Do you know what I mean? But I guess they do. But like I say, they shouldn't have to.
I think at the minute it's just that there'll be certain players in the firing line for certain people, and I think we're in that mode at the minute where if something's said that is remotely going against the grain or whatever, it's going to get a reaction from people, and I think this is unfortunate because I know Gary is if Gary was on, he would be saying a similar thing, but I think Sean Rowan's one of his players of the season so far. Like he's been very, very solid. Yes, he's mishit a few passes, but as I said on Monday, I think when you see one pass being mishit, you then look out for the next one, and then when it's mishit as well, you get that in your mind. You go, oh, he's putting passes all over the shop, and then when you look back at it, you're like, oh, actually, that wasn't too bad. But yeah, it's. I just wonder if this is going to be burrowing into their brains. I mean, I did see somebody potentially say, oh, he's probably looking at it going, why should I bother? All I'm going to do is get hammered. Why should I bother doing this? Why should I, and I can see that, to be fair. Again, he's a young lad. Let's not crucify him for folding his arms in a press conference, for Christ's sake. Right, we are hurtling towards the hour mark. So Enjoy Your Fishing says, evening lads, I know our budget isn't the best, but I honestly feel that House, McGrandles and Hamilton have run their course with us. I wouldn't fault their effort, but I do feel that they are bottom half League One players. Thoughts, Charlie?
I disagree. Honestly, I get the point. I disagree with the point, and I think it's maybe coincidental, and it's maybe kind of a common thought. If maybe a few more people are thinking about kind of House, McGrandles, and Hamilton in that same kind of vein of conversation, bearing in mind those three are the three players that have probably been hit the most with injury, well, not the most, but have been hit reasonably heavily with injuries over the past 12 to 18 months.
Yep.
Bearing in mind that's, Hamilton came in 18 months ago. Conor McGrandles came in 12 months ago. Okay, yes, Ben House has been here for longer. So I think it's probably just a little bit harsh to be judging them so far on that. And I think they've definitely got a strong place to to bolster the squad. And I think if we're looking to improve the squad, I don't think it's by getting rid of those players as part of a squad of, again, 23 players. We talk about how we might not be as strong on 3-game weeks and things like that. If that is maybe the case, and I'm sure, obviously, Gaz made the point about it, and if that is the case, well, the key to that is making sure that we've got a strong enough squad that we can have multiple lineups, if you like, and kind of 2 for each position. And I don't think that the way to strengthen is by getting rid of House, McGrandles and Hamilton from those 2 in each position kind of quota.
Fair point. I would disagree as well. I would say that it's fair that particularly Ethan Hamilton hasn't necessarily looked like the player that we had at the end of last season. That is partly down to him recovering from a serious injury that kept him out for quite a time. But I think he's getting back there. You saw what it meant to him when he in inverted commas scored the other week. You could see how much it meant to him to get that. And I think it'd be a shame if he were to go. Are they on the level of Ethan or Roughan? No, but let's be honest, there aren't that many players that are. And I think what we've said about Conor McGrandles in the past is that you notice what he does when he's not there. I think that's still true. I think he has had a couple of off games. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. I think he admitted himself when we spoke on the deadline day show that I think the previous game he'd not had the best of games, and it's going to take time to build that back up. You're not going to become you're not going to rediscover yourself as the Scottish Kaka overnight. You will take a couple of games to get your form back. So hopefully we'll see the best of him. And as for Ben House, again, not been in the best of form this season, but they say form is temporary, class is permanent. I think Ben House has got, he is a class player. I think he will rediscover his form at some stage, and I think we will be a better side for it. I think if we were to get rid of those players, I think we'd be worse off for it, for sure.
I think if Ben House, specifically out of the 3, if Ben House was to leave and go to another League One side, I think that. That's what I mean. I think we definitely rue missed opportunities. I really, really do. Because again, I think he's a really strong player, and I think he's one of the best at what he does in this division. Has that been shown in the best light so far this season? No. But again, that's not necessarily always a slight on him. Sometimes it's the way that we're kind of setting up in certain games, maybe not getting the best out of him. There are 11 players on the pitch. You can't always get the best out of every single player in every single game. Every player that we have has had a bad game with us, has probably had 2, 3, 4, 5 bad games with us. It happens, like you were just saying there with Conor McGrandles. Tendai Derek was one of my favourite players so far this season. He's had a couple of bad games, a few bad games. But still, overall, when you kind of take it into the context of the whole of the season, still really promising. And I think when you look at someone like Ben House, I take it into the context of what he's done overall since he came into the club, out of non-league as well, by the way. And I just think he's able to take that step up. And I think if we were a team that were firing, I think we would see Ben House firing with us, not hindering that kind of firepower.
Yeah, 100%. Gaz Nicholson says, Jeffries and House would be good changes for Saturday. I think we will be a poorer side if Sean does decide to explore his options in the summer. He is a decent player for this level. Agreed 100% on that one, Gaz. I've just realised we didn't put a prediction in for the weekend, Charlie. I mean, I know we've spoken about Orient, we've spoken about how strong they are. I know we've said, can we potentially do something? What do we think? Can we come away with anything on Saturday, let alone 3 points?
Can we? Yes.
Will we?
Will we? God knows, Okay, genuine prediction. I am going to say that this is going to be our... I'm going to go for it. This is going to be our 3rd League 1-1 draw in a row.
You know what? I'm thinking the exact same thing. I was going to say 2-2, but I think that's probably a bit optimistic. I'll happily go with 1-1. It is going to be a very tight game, and as we said, with Orient not conceding all that many, we're going to have to do a pretty good job to stop them scoring a couple. So if we can get them to scoring the same amount of goals as they did against Manchester City, I will be a happy camper on that one. So right, the final question of the evening comes from Malcolm. He says, if anyone's been to Orient in recent years, he hasn't. Can you say if the pie and mash they advertised is as good as it looks on various websites? I don't know, because I didn't have it when we went a couple of years ago.
Did you not?
We went in the notoriously ill-fated match, and that was that was a very odd night. But I didn't have pie and mash that night. But I do seem to remember that we found a bar, didn't we, just down the road? Was that the Orient game?
We did. It was the Orient game. It was. We went down the street. I think the away pub was closed, and we ended up having to go somewhere else. And I think my blue badge came in clutch that evening as well, if I remember correctly.
We parked on the street, literally like down the road from the stadium. So we're like, we'll happily give Charlie a lift to all his away games if you want.
He says that, by the way. I don't think I went in the car with him for another away game. So
it's because you buggered off to Gibraltar.
And because you don't go to away games, of course. I've not had it. Chances are it'll be in a cardboard box little thing that they do, and it'll just be one of your typical pucker pies with probably some really lumpy mash. But that's just
the best thing to do is check out. Is it Footy Scran? Footy Scran, I think it is on Twitter. They do decent reviews and photos of everything on there. So. Right, I think we're just about done, but it is always important to plug things. Go and sponsor Gaz for his London Marathon training. He is smashing it at the minute. I think he did another 4 or 5 miles this morning when I spoke to him earlier. He thinks he might be slightly ahead of his training, which is impressive. So go and sponsor Gaz. Make sure we can get him up to as much as possible. I am just trying to load up the total because as of the other day, he was at £2,237. It's 2,227. That seems lower. Presumably that doesn't include the gift aid. But he is getting more and more sponsorship through. So keep yourself. Make sure you get over there and you give Gaz a decent donation so that he can raise plenty of money for the foundation. Because as we've said, they do amazing work across Lincolnshire, not just for Lincoln fans. Right. Is there anything else that we need to plug? Charlie, did you manage to get a preview sorted or have I shown you up?
No, a preview is being recorded in about an hour's time.
Beautiful.
With Jake, a Leyton Orient fan. So obviously you may be listening to this before it's up, but you may also be listening to it after it's up. And if you are, then make sure to go over and check it out on YouTube, and that will hopefully be up right now. Fingers crossed.
That'll be up as soon as possible. But there we go. Look, as we always say, get yourself over to the YouTube channel if you're not already there. If you are watching this live or recorded, drop a like on it and all of that good stuff. Subscribe to the podcast, get on the Patreon. That gives you access to the Discord so you can come and give us abuse and ask us questions. But I don't think there's anything else more that we need to say, Charlie, other than up the Imps.
Up the Imps.